Welcome to another episode of Squawking Dead. We're talking about this week's episode of The Walking Dead titled Dead or Alive, or what, Scott M. Gimple, or what, Bobby Kirkman, or what, Gregory Nicotero. Oh, by the way, great work with the Toadstool and Swamp Walkers.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like the showrunners are really trying to challenge themselves with this episode. Let's see if the viewing audience can tell that we've created our own version of not one, but two, count them, two rebooted episodes of The Odd Couple, all in the same episode. You've got the pragmatic Dr. Carson and the pie-in-the-sky Father Gabriel, plus the walking wounded Dwight and his lovely murdering roommate Tara. Just for kicks, they threw in an almost lost Morgan and a what in the world are you thinking teaching a kid that murdering people isn't going to screw you up, Carol? Yeah. At the end of the day, the only dynamic duo that matters to me is the one where I'm the Robin to her Batman, the Louise to her Thelma, the Jack Klugman to her Tony Randall. You know the woman of whom I speak, Carol.
Your intros get better and better every week. I'm so touched.
Even I'm laughing. I can't even.
That was actually really good.
There's, to keep the funny going, I need to go back to 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
I had meant to mention this in the episode, but I didn't really quite get to it. Walk back to the Carl fantasy of them in the garden in Alexandria and all that stuff. And the scene with Cooper Andrews. Now I don't know his name in the show.
Oh, God.
This is how much I love him, actually.
Jerry.
Of course, Jerry. Cooper Andrews. I love you. How he explains how he came there, and you've got that butternut squash pie thing. And then, he says, how can I resist Sadiq? And then my alarm started ringing. I'm like, oh my God, is Jerry gay? And is Sadiq gay?
I had not thought about that. Oh my gosh. I did not.
My shipping, sensors were just tingling.
Oh my gosh. That is so interesting. I mean, many people would be very heartbroken over that. Especially for Jerry.
I'm overjoyed.
I don't know. I wonder. That would be, yeah, they'll elaborate, I'm sure.
Maybe not. I'm kind of enjoying it the way it is right now. Some people are, I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks this, but that maybe Daryl is gay as well.
Daryl is asexual. They do not give him anything whatsoever. So I'm kind of hoping that next season, like I told you before, I'm hoping that they'll give some of what would have been potentially Carl's storyline, potential love interest, and give it to Daryl so that Daryl has something. I mean, everybody on this show has gotten something in terms of a love interest. Everybody. If you think about it.
We got to clean this up somehow.
Everybody's gotten something. How is it that even Sasha, Abraham, Rosita, Enid, Aaron, all of these characters have had some semblances of love interest? Daryl, nothing.
Even Amanda and the governor.
He's an original cast member, and he has gotten nothing in 8 seasons. I'm like, how is that possible? And I say it all the time. I'm like, he needs something to give him more depth also, because Daryl typically runs, snorts, does some cool action thing. That's about it. They don't give him all that much to work with. You know?
And on this episode, he yells at people.
He did. He yelled at Tara, which I am kind of happy with because I'm reaching my limit with Tara. My patience is just very much waning with her. Yes, I get it. He shot your girlfriend, Dr. Denise, but they were together for 15 minutes. It wasn't even for that long. If we're really going to get nitpicky about it and start to be Dwight was on, Negan's side and I don't care if he's helping us now, whatever. Tara was on the governor's side originally, and then she came over to the other side via Glenn. So it's dude, the whole way that you were introduced was via the governor. You were in cahoots with them. I mean, yeah, you didn't know how much of a psychopath he was. You were in that group until eventually, you were embraced and brought into the fold because Glenn is such a was R.I.P. Glenn, such a wonderful, sweethearted, kind man. Come on, dude. You're the governor. You have no place to throw stones, personally.
Yeah, that's true. But you know what it is? You may be onto something. It's that the things you hate in others are things you actually hate in yourself.
True.
So maybe that's part of it.
That's a good point. It's very possible. And in reality, Dwight has done far more to kind of help their cause than Tara ever did. Tara was just kind of basically alone, and Glenn kind of opened his arms and let her in. But Dwight has actively tried to make it very clear, I am not for this. I don't stand by this. This is not what I want. So I will do everything that I can to help you because I don't believe in this.
Yeah.
So
and not only that, it's like he's capable. He has like clear skills and leadership skills and all that.
Yep.
And Tara has had to kind of really make a go of it and really try to build herself up.
Definitely.
And wasn't she a cop too? Like, wasn't she an officer?
I think you might be right. I think so. I forgot about that, but I think you are right.
And I don't know how far she got. I know they talked about it on the show. And obviously, this is like what 4 or 5 seasons ago. But yeah, I mean, I know they went into it. I know she was applying. I don't know how far but like to think about like how not useless. That's just a mean thing to say, but how that really doesn't really prepare her for the post-apocalypse.
No, she's not the most martial of characters.
Right.
Just saying.
It's funny how I didn't even think we'd get into Tara, at all, like her personality and where she came from. But and we have before, but going into some of the her background again, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, the psychology too. The thing you hate in yourself is the things you hate more in others. But then also her inability to let this go too.
Yeah, that's my thing.
Is it more about her than it is about Denise, you think?
I think so. I think it's more about her than Denise at this point, because I'm just like, oh my God, man, like, when are you going to just give it a rest already? She's just keep going with it. And everybody keeps telling her this is not the time. We have to kind of stay the course. And meanwhile, she's just insistent on it. I'm just like, why are you being so stubborn about this? I don't understand. Oh. Yeah, I don't get it.
We can walk through exactly what happened, but it was almost like 3 strikes, right?
Yeah.
What was it? So the first one was the burnt walker, the toasty walker, which I was actually very impressed with. Showed on the screen for a little bit. Yeah, it came out of nowhere. She threw it on Dwight.
Yeah, which was so it was so childish. I'm sorry. It's just so, it just irritated me. I'm like, why are you doing that? Why? Like, what purpose does that serve now?
It's like he got it. They could have made that a little bit more funny, though, too. Instead, it just came off as really disturbing.
Yeah, it was disturbing. This episode made me sad. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I mean, there were moments, but yeah, this portion of the episode was probably meant to make you a little bit mad.
Yeah, I think that definitely was the point, for sure. For sure.
What was the second thing? Unless there was only 2 things. I'm trying to recall right now.
She threw the walker on him. Then they eventually get to the swamp. He tells them how Negan isn't going to have his men go through there because they've already kind of established that it's too dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And so she kind of like hangs back with him to get her opportunity or whatever. And, she does eventually try to take a shot at him at like point blank range and misses, which is not very promising for her.
Oh, yeah. She was very close, though. Let's just be clear.
She was very close. She was. Chase ensues. He happens to come across a group of saviors that was scoping the area. And he proves how he's on their side by like popping out and basically falling into like, hey, it's Dwight, savior Dwight.
Yeah, he's clearly wounded. Like, I got out of there with the skin of my teeth kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And they're like, oh my gosh. And his fear was that Laura, the savior, who was the one who shot him, had already gotten back and tattled on him, basically. But it seems that they don't know where she is. So
lucky for him, too.
Very lucky for him, for sure.
On 2 fronts. So yes. It's either Tara or Laura.
Yeah.
They sound alike.
I know, right? Yeah. Laura's with Sherry. I'm just saying.
Oh, man. Whoa! What?
Yeah.
Oh, just for that, I'm gonna find out where Sherry is.
I'm going there because he mentioned there was a point when they were in that forest and they were walking around that I think Dwight was mentioning about how like he cares about it. He just wants to find Sherry. She might be out here somewhere because she escaped. And yep, don't close the book on Sherry. Sherry's out there, and if Laura hasn't shown up, Laura and Sherry are out there, very possibly together. I'm just saying.
So you think this might be like a last hurrah thing? Like maybe like when the war is all over, Laura just pops up and goes, "Ha ha! I have your wife."
Yep.
I mean Negan's wife.
My personal theory is that this whole war's, and this is comic book spoiler. Personally,
okay.
I think that what will happen if they try to follow the comic, which obviously doesn't mean anything anymore with the death of Carl, like anything really could happen. So whatever. Yeah, the war could be over. Everything's hunky-dory. And Laura and Sherry show up and decide like, haha, we're going to be the new leaders of the Saviors now. Haha.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting.
Very possible. Very possible. I wouldn't sleep on the fact like, oh, Laura and Sherry, they just disappeared. No, they didn't. Nope.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rewind my brain so I don't know that. Whoa, Carol, the audio cut out there for a few seconds. I don't know what you just said. But anyway...
Moving on.
Moving on. I'm sorry about that. I'll edit that out.
Sure.
My little brain fart. I just don't know what happened.
Doesn't mean that it's going to happen.
What exactly?
Exactly. What is exactly it?
Yeah. Well, all I know is the last thing I heard was that, I guess Dwight was picked up by the Saviors.
Yes, Dwight was picked up by the Saviors, and he basically gave them, a means to get to safety. Basically.
Yeah, lucky him though. Yeah, that's great. And do you think? Okay, I still think that Dwight is still on the Alexandrian side.
Yes, I believe so.
And this really does give him the opportunity to kind of work from within some more, I think.
Agreed.
Okay, so we're on the same page.
Absolutely. I do agree with that. I think he's still very much on Team Rick, for sure.
Team Alexandria. Well, what did they call? Oh, Auk.
Oh, my God.
Alexandria Hilltop Kingdom.
That is so funny.
From the onset of the episode, we're actually jumping backwards in time to catch up with the moment that they find out that Carson and Gabriel are gone, right?
That is true. Yeah.
Because by the last episode, we're already at the point where Rick is even radioing him it.
Right.
And sometime during this episode, we overlap that. It's kind of funny that way because you notice a couple things. This episode does play a lot with, is there divine providence? Is there godly intervention?
Man of science versus man of faith.
Yeah. Is it coincidence or is it faith, right? Is it some sort of otherworldly being in control of our destiny?
Higher power.
Right. So the first thing that I noticed, because obviously we've seen the episode, and then when we rewatched it, I noticed that had it not been for Carson and Gabriel's escape, the bridge patrol in the beginning of the episode wouldn't have been called away, and the Alexandrians might have been detected.
Very true. It's very possible, yeah. That goes to the whole things happening for a reason, the higher purpose. And that's something that I feel, unbeknownst to Gabriel, he had some sort of purpose in, because I think he's really sort of bent on this whole his purpose, for sure.
And ultimately, getting a doctor to Hilltop. It may not have been Dr. Carson.
Exactly. Yep. That's very true. In getting Sadiq there.
Yeah. Go figure. Wrong faith. No. But yeah, the one thing that's interesting about this episode is that even though, just to jump to the end of it, even though you see Father Gabriel break, it's still, I'm not saying that I believe in God now, but what I'm saying is that to suit that narrative, everything that happens in this episode has been kind of fortuitous. All these happenstance things that kind of line up and opportunities grasped, good things just seem to happen when they're looking for it. So it does happen, whether he likes it or not. Carson, having died, may have suited a purpose as well. If you think about it, he would have been tortured.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that he was trying to escape, or do you think that it was sort of like a suicide by cop situation, which is what I think Carson was doing personally?
Ooh.
I think that Dr. Carson is far too smart to think that he's going to be able to steal one savior's gun and take out numerous ones that came and captured them. I don't think so. My initial instinct was that this was a kind of sacrificial situation in order to also avoid returning and exactly what you said, being tortured and...
Well, like his brother was.
Exactly.
Yeah. I am being moved by what you're saying. The needle on the side of him actually thinking he could get away versus being shot by them on purpose. Yeah, that I'm kind of in the middle now. I really don't know what to think about that. I really don't.
It made me feel very sad because I felt like, I liked Dr. Carson, and I kind of like this whole, how you were saying, this whole kind of odd couple relationship between the two of them.
Yeah.
I kind of like this man of science and man of faith sort of thing. And I like that kind of hopefulness when they find the house and the antibiotics and all of that. What did you think about that? The house and the elements in the house, the antibiotics and all of that. The antibiotics,
the radio,
the keys, the note. What did you think about all that, by the way?
It's kind of like what I was saying about Gabriel. Like, I think he's actually right. The person that lived there was trying to give hope to people. Yeah, maybe ultimately he gave his life up, but I think it's an allegory too. I think there's a limit to how much faith a person can have. What I really got from this episode is that sometimes what you think is your salvation really isn't. I think a lot of people spend their times treating that higher power as kind of like a wishing well, rather than really kind of giving themselves up to possibility, is what I'll call it, to chance, the infinite amount of possibilities that are out there. So I think in this episode, Father Gabriel loses his faith because the end result isn't what he wanted, or isn't what he expected. Had he kept having faith, he would just rely on the next infinite possibility. Okay, maybe I messed up here, and that's fine. Or maybe this messing up is meant for something more. Had he kept doing that, maybe he would find a way to actually eventually at some point, and maybe he will still realize that some of the things that had happened were fortuitous, like, the Alexandrians being able to get to Hilltop and Carson not being around to be interrogated / tortured by Negan. Things like that. Maybe the machine shop with Eugene is exactly where he needs to be. And maybe Eugene lends his own form of goodwill and faith.
I think so. I think he will. I think he still cares about Rick and crew. And I think Gabriel will be able to influence Eugene and make him understand that he still can help them. They're still away.
You think Gabriel will influence Eugene, or the other way around?
I think Gabriel will influence Eugene. I think that Gabriel will still try and find. He's still going to work on trying to find like what can be done, or maybe he doesn't. Necessarily. In my mind, I just kind of feel that, especially with Gabriel being blind, I almost wonder if that's going to have something to do with play into the whole shell casings. And if I always suspected it's like, well, he could make either defective bullets or maybe blanks. This could be an opportunity to be able to have that situation happen.
So you think Gabriel will give himself up, like in a way, like, okay, I'm gonna screw this up on purpose?
I think so. I mean, I think that Gabriel is kind of coming to the end of his arc, because gosh, like how much more can he really go after this? He's not in good shape. He's not necessarily in a good place health-wise. And somebody brought it up too in an article that we're saying, like, gosh, have we seen a situation of someone disabled in this kind of environment? How do you even survive? Which is very true. How long can Gabriel necessarily survive in this kind of environment without being very much taken care of?
We did see Herschel here. Herschel had one leg. The governor had one eye. I guess
Carl, that's true.
Carl too, yeah. The governor had one eye too, right?
He did.
Yeah, okay.
Courtesy of Michonne.
Just checking. Right. But not where I would need like full rehabilitation. Like, okay, I need to learn how to read with my fingers, or rely on my other senses.
Yeah,
completely.
Which is what he was doing. He was relying on his hearing.
Yeah, midway in. Right. Oh man, how strange. But you know what though? I don't think that Father Gabriel's going to actually rally. I actually think the other way around. I think Eugene's going to find a way to drag him into faith somehow.
Okay.
I think he thinks that I don't know if I'm going to make it if I can't get Gabriel to cheer up. I think I need Father Gabriel to have that chipper mood or whatever, so that I can lift myself up, because I think that's the only thing that got him out of the wine drinking business.
Wine drinking business.
I think it's going to be out of self-interest. I don't know if it's going to work. And I think Gabriel might end up surrendering himself to his story. Let's just say, try to sacrifice himself to be of use. So, that's where I'm going.
I was very much intrigued by this house, though. And I have so many questions about this house.
Go for it.
First of all, I guess it's three things. The antibiotics that I guess helped Gabriel to an extent, because it seems like he wasn't doing too well. He was feverish. And Dr. Carson was like, oh, these antibiotics are going to save your life or whatever. So I found that to be very interesting, because I was like, okay, so he was infected. He got sick with the whole guts thing. And obviously, it got pretty bad or whatever, but the antibiotics were able to kind of keep it controlled. Obviously, like, he had deteriorated to a certain point, but these antibiotics were able to kind of stop further deterioration.
Right.
This is progress. Is this something that we should make a note of?
Oh, you're saying like that there's a cure to the bite?
I'm wondering, is this something to bear in mind for something else? I don't know. That was one thing. The other thing was the note that was in the piggy bank that was to Barrington Museum House or whatever, which is the Hilltop. And that Barrington House, whatever, that's the Hilltop.
I don't know why I didn't think of that. I just like, whatever that is.
I mean, I'm assuming the person that was the walker that was there with the bag over their head was the person who lived there. But it's just like, why would they have in mind to go there? That out of curiosity, like I don't understand why that would be like, oh, go there. So interesting. And
that is definitely something to think about.
Yeah. And then the other thing is the thing that had me practically waving streamers and white flags and fireworks out the window was like the freaking ham radio. I was like, oh, that ham radio, that is Chekhov's ham radio. That thing is going to come up. Mark my words. It's coming up. It could be, this is
like
how I see it.
Like a minor thing or?
No, this is how I see this going down.
Okay.
In my mind, we end this war in the second to last episode, let's say. Second to last, I would say, episode. Okay. Last episode, we do a time jump. We're going to the future. It's not Carl's vision exactly, but it is a vision of the future. It's a better future. Not exactly how Carl pictured it, but it's a better future. It's peace and whatever. Eugene is back in the fold again, recolonized and rebuilt and all that sort of stuff, including that house. And Eugene is there and he's tinkering around that and he plays around with that and whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if the end of this season involves him tinkering around with that and then somebody finally answering like, hello, 10-4, blah, 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 whatever. And we make contact. Oh yes, that ham radio is going to make contact with whoever the hell is flying that helicopter.
Oh, snap.
Yes.
You went to the helicopter.
Yeah, that helicopter and that ham radio, it's all connected.
It's Heath.
It's Heath. Heath is going to answer.
I've been flying this helicopter the whole season.
Heath is going to answer
Where can I land?
I'm standing firm that Heath and Sherry are coming back, and like Heath's going to be the one to answer that ham radio.
Yeah, Heath, Sherry, and Laura just jump out of a chopper.
Just hanging out.
Yeah, we're just hanging out in the sky, where birds are.
I'm telling you, they're going to come in contact with some military operation that's going to answer on that ham radio that's responsible for that helicopter. I'm telling you, man. When I saw that ham radio, I was like, yes.
So like a minor time jump though, right? Like not like 5 years in the future.
I think 5 years.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. I think 4 to 5 years, yeah. I don't think like something like 10 years or something like that. Nothing huge. But I would say, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that would make things a lot more interesting with Judith too. Mm-hmm. By the way, yeah, no more baby actors to deal with.
Exactly.
No more poopy diapers.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I totally think that's going to be the case. I think that radio, when I saw it, I was like, red flag, this thing is going to be useful.
Wow.
It's like when you play those video games. Did you ever play like Day of the Tentacle back in the day?
I played Maniac Mansion, but I never played its sequel.
Okay. Yeah. It's one of those things that like, you go into a room and there's stuff and you need to use it and it's there for a reason. That's this. But
you can't until later, until you get a piece.
Right, exactly. All the elements have to line up in order for you to use it. But I am telling you that ham radio will be used.
Yeah, like Eugene has that piece.
That is Eugene's piece. Eugene needs to get to the house in order to play around and fix the ham radio, and then they'll make contact. Right,
you have to use another player, like in the game. The player with the expertise.
Exactly. It's the same thing.
Okay. I didn't know.
My nerd level just went up.
Yeah, I didn't know the Walking Dead was a pixel hunt game. So there you go. I'm enjoying this idea. Oh man.
Yeah. So those were the 3 elements that I found very interesting about that house, was the antibiotics and how useful, I guess, that could be, the map to the hilltop and why they would have a map to the hilltop at all, in a opinion.
Right. And like, who was this person, or why would they think that's a good idea?
Why would they think that's a good idea to keep it hidden with a set of keys to a car? Like, it was just very strange. And then the radio. So those 3 things, I'm like, alrighty, I'm keeping my eye on you.
These are like another thing that we just have to put in the piggy bank of things that will come back later.
Exactly.
To bite us.
Exactly.
Wow.
Precisely. Yep.
Yeah, I kept writing in my notes, God is 1 for 1. God is 2 for 2. The one thing I actually wrote, God is technically 3 for 3 for, is the warning sign about the traps, because that was in the initial first part of the episode. This is what further reaffirms my idea that what Gabriel should have learned is that God isn't like a wishing well. You know, God isn't going to give it to you the way you want it.
No.
What you have to do is be open to possibility. And the sign was there. Literal sign was there, warning about the traps. It was the sign that brought you there.
Yeah.
And, you were so wrapped up in being being saved that you forgot that God had his own plan and you just didn't look for his signs.
Yeah.
You know, you were looking for your own signs.
Right.
Yeah, you got lucky with your own signs, with the antibiotics, with the keys, and the, you know, the one sign that you didn't pay attention to was, there's traps, buddy.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this on the way to getting to the car, too. You know, you got too cocky, buddy.
Yeah.
It's easy to see that, like, oh, Carson was a believer, and then he got cocky, too, and, you know. Did you really initially think that his thing was shot by a cop? Or was it, wow, right from the jump?
Right from jump. I don't know. There was something about it that just made me feel like this is a Hail Mary attempt to get out of returning to Negan.
Right.
I felt
like a suicide.
Exactly. Like basically.
Or kamikaze, let's say. Yeah.
Basically like a kamikaze sort of thing, because it's like, you know what's going to happen when you go back. So why put yourself through that torture that you know he's going to put you through? So
yeah,
that was right away my gut feeling was, and that's why it made me sad. I was like, oh God, poor Dr. Carson.
Yeah. Well, my feeling is I'm leaning towards that now. Yeah, you make me a believer in that one.
Ironically enough.
Yeah, ironically, right.
But I felt bad also seeing Gabriel break at that point. That's the point where you see him finally kind of break down in tears. That's where he is broken. He's gotten to that point. But literally, Carson saved his life by doing that, because it gave him an alibi to give Negan, because Negan's already suspected, based on his conversation with Eugene at the start of the episode, that, Carson, you know, can't be trusted or whatever. It was probably all him. And Gabriel just basically confirmed it. So he's like, all right, so it was Carson.
Yeah, here I am.
Now, so, you know.
Yeah, here's another layer to that, though. Do you think it was easier for Gabriel to have all that faith because Carson was there? Do you think he would have had the same level of faith had he not been there?
I think that's a good point. I mean, maybe that's part of it. Maybe, you know, having that sort of support from Dr. Carson made him feel more emboldened to feel like, you know, I have faith, you know, look, you know, you're with me and we've gotten this far and whatever. And I think if he was alone, he might not be so inclined to have this sort of faith. Although I will say he has been in the past couple of seasons a lot more about like, oh, you know, you have to have this faith or whatever.
Or purpose, right?
Purpose, because even when he was captured by the garbage people, he seemed to kind of have faith that, you know, Rick was going to come and they were going to like save him and all of that. And he was pretty bold with Negan when they were in the trailer. So I feel like he's definitely become much more confident and bold because of his kind of revived faith, that he doesn't necessarily hesitate. He doesn't cower in fear, Father Gabriel, as much as he used to.
I think it's because he was fresh, though, if you think about it. Like, okay, he was kind of back in action. He had all the reason in the world to kind of be motivated with this plan. Yeah. But you know what? I think what this season has showed us is that, and you see this with Rick, you see this with Daryl, you see this every now and again with every single person. I think it's starting to happen with everybody. And it happened with Eugene in this episode, is that you get these people and they do a courageous thing. And then when something happens, anything, they kind of fall back to their old habits. And Rick did this the last episode. You know, he was all about promising Carl that future and then just automatically comes back to wanting to kill Negan. You see with Eugene's like full on savior, I'm gonna make bullets, you know. So, and then I think you're seeing that now with Father Gabriel. You're seeing that no, this wasn't supposed to be like that. And maybe this was his initial reaction to how he was in the church by himself, locking himself up, like the way he felt. You know, it's not supposed to be like this. The apocalypse, it's killing everybody, and you know they want to get me, and I have no choice. I got to lock myself up. Right. You know, I have to lock myself up to faith. You know, I got to rely on my instincts and then me. So I think he shook. And look, I want to just go back to what I said in the last episode. I don't blame anybody for going there, you know, for Rick and his grief, and Eugene and his terror, and even Father Gabriel for really giving it a go. Yeah. It's very easy to kind of judge. Do I think that he's going to be the one to motivate Eugene? No, but do I think he's going to find a way back? Do I think he might pull a Carson? Maybe. Like that's my feeling. I feel like he's going to find some way to be useful. Yeah. And it's going to be of him in kind of an ironic way. It's like hell or high water. It's not about this. It's not about that. It's about the people I love.
Right.
If this is God's plan, this is God's plan. But if it's not, whatever, be damned.
Yeah.
It's their plan, and I'm shooting for their future, that kind of thing. I'm hoping it isn't, though. I really do hope that he is a character. I have learned to kind of adore him in a way, kind of like in the way I can somehow stomach Eugene now.
Yes.
The fact that Eugene is kind of a character we can identify with, that we want to kind of like to identify with. This is kind of who we would be, but even he's trying to find courage and trying to find the right thing to do. Gabriel's kind of surpassed that, and I kind of want that to continue.
Yeah, I do too. I do want that to continue. I don't want this to be like the end of it.
Yeah.
So I do hope it does continue. I don't know necessarily what could be done, but I do think that they'll do it's almost kind of like a passive resistance. I think that's kind of what they can do from where they are in terms of being in this bullet making capacity, and just kind of either potentially smuggling bullets to the resistance or sabotaging the actual quality of these bullets.
Now that you say the first thing, smuggling the bullets, like, because he did make it seem like Negan, I can't seem to get the quantity. Right. Maybe there's an expectation that that seems more likely, I think.
It's possible.
He's already set the expectations, pretty low.
Right, exactly.
And then now Negan has his own plan. We see this at the end of the episode already, but he has his own plan about the psychops,
Right.
borrowing the thing that happened to Gabriel in his experience with him, how he got really sick really fast, and then using it against Hilltop.
Yeah.
So,
and by the way, can I just say that is exactly from the comics, the bio warfare sort of idea, 100%. And I want to say another note: when I was watching this with my husband Eddie, he was like, "They're just coming up with this now."
Okay, Mr. Smarty Pants, listen here. Are you on a show called Squawking Dead?
But I did find it really funny, because it is one of those things where it's like, it's only been 8 seasons.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we did see a form of this in the prison, to the point where people got so sick that they they died and they turned in the prison, in the walls. So it's kind of like, which is like Carol's departure at a certain point.
Yes.
So,
very true.
But you can't say it wasn't that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's not as if they had only thought of this now.
Time. Yeah, that is the first time we got a little bit of a taste of the whole biohazard kind of thing beyond like the initial outbreak sort of stuff.
Right. Like just being around these bodies, let's say.
Yeah.
It's not a good look.
The idea of plague,
Yeah. You're not immune to it.
No.
You can still get sick in this world.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is one of those things.
Right. It's one of those things, and you don't have handy antibiotics necessarily to fight this stuff.
That's true. Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is you could do anything to get people sick, and that's already a disadvantage.
Yeah, just that in and of itself, just getting people ill.
Yeah, but the fact that it's that, and it's that powerful, it's just game over.
Oof.
It's just that much more debilitating, having this particular kind of illness. Oh, man. But yeah, Negan does trot out the line that it's a good reminder that anything that they do, that Ock does, is on them. It's interesting to be reminded of Negan's neurosis.
Yes.
How it may not come down to it being a gunfight, but if it is, it's all on them. They're the ones that are not falling in line.
Right.
It's a theme that's kind of repeating, like, it's on them, and Rick is like, it's on them for starting this whole thing. It's got to end, we got to put him down. It's got to be over. It's got to be done. We got to kill him.
But it's so interesting to me, though, because I think that this is one of the things that I have a little trouble reconciling with in this episode when it comes to Negan. We just got off of another episode where it's all about people are a resource. You can't just sort of arbitrarily kill people, that sort of stuff. It's not necessarily Simon arbitrarily just going and killing the masses. And I think we get more of an inkling of it in the sneak peek for next week. Did you get a chance to see it?
Oh, yeah. You get the sneak peek at the end of the episode, but then the extended one in Talking Dead expands on that. And I kind of just lump them in the same thing because it just makes sense.
Yeah.
That's fortuitous.
My biggest issue with this episode with Negan was just the fact that his kind of approach right now is, like you said, it's very like, well, they brought this onto themselves. And I think Eugene brings it up. Oh, people being a resource and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. He reminds him of his own philosophy.
Right. And he kind of makes it seem like, well, you know, if they shoot at us, then we need to, basically he tries to use the whole self-defense kind of argument. It's like, if they're going to come at us, you know, then we need to be ready to defend ourselves.
And if something happens to them, it's really their fault.
Then it's really their fault because they were aggressing to us and we just want to save them.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it brings up a good question, because the one thing I did want to expand on what Eugene was saying was that if you really think about it, from where Eugene was before and where he is now, he wouldn't even question Negan, but he did. Mm-hmm. And that really is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. What I wrote down was, is he cracking? Is this getting to be too much for him?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was, especially with somebody like Eugene.
Yeah. Well, and then, you know, further reinforce the point, he asks if there's going to be wine, because he knows that, like, I'm going to have to do this, and if I'm going to have to do this, and again, falling back to his old habits. Right. And I think Negan is doing the same thing, if you really think about it, instead of trying something different. And it's the same thing. It's like I said last week, insanity is trying the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And Negan is doing the same thing. Like, we have to keep going after the Alexanders. We have to teach them a lesson. We have to get these people in line. And meanwhile, like, his lieutenants are dropping off left and right. And meanwhile, they're not complying. It's not working.
Right.
And the fact that Eugene cracks means that, okay, something is changing with him. And that's just proving you think Eugene is insane. You know, Eugene's a little off his rocker, but it just shows that he really is kind of on. You know, he really is somewhat of an adjusted person, that he could at some point be the sane one and just kind of say, hey, buddy, this is not what you ultimately want. Yeah. If keeping people as a resource is ultimately what you want, doing this, I mean, how many resources are you going to have left? Half of them? Is that what you want? Yeah. There's got to be a better way.
I agree. I thought that was very interesting. I guess they like to do this. They like to swing back and forth with Negan. Some points, he's this guy who's feeling bad for Carl's death and making him spaghetti. And then the next minute, he's on this kick. So he's very up and down.
Yeah. I think he's suffering from the same thing that everybody else is, trying to stick to the formula. And even Negan's going to have to at some point realize that, or maybe not until it's too late, or it's seeming as though we're going to get a taste of that form of insanity on his end. Because, you know, and I'll jump to the sneak peek, because we've opened the door to it. One thing I want to say first is that the sneak peek was amazing. Usually the sneak peeks are so goddamn boring, just so non-elucidating.
Yeah. Like random.
And this was so action-packed and so intense and tells us a lot about where this episode's going to go.
I think it's going to be a very good episode.
But not in a bad way. That was just a minute. Yeah, there's 40 minutes in an episode, so there's got to be something that leads up to it, something after that, maybe. Right. And we find out that Rick comes out of nowhere, runs Negan off the road in a tight space, and Simon kind of takes over, and we're assuming that he's going to continue executing Negan's plan, rallying the troops, saying, for Negan, because obviously he's not there.
Right.
My expectation is that there's going to be a reckoning between Negan and Rick, and there's going to be something substantial that comes out of it. And I don't know what that's going to be, but do you have feelings on this?
I'm looking forward to the episode. This is episode 12. And I guess here's the thing. Like, I am so antsy for them to just, I don't want to say wrap up this all out war arc, but I am very much looking forward to the crescendo and conclusion of this, because for whatever reason, and maybe it's because it's been so segmented, or last season, I should say, it was very segmented, where it was like, this is a Daryl episode and he's in a cell, and this is a Rick episode and he's being beaten down, and here's a Tara episode.
Like a slower paced sets of series of episodes.
That it's felt like this is dragged out a little bit, for me at least.
Right.
So I think that the pace is definitely going to quicken, because of the fact that Alexandria burned down, and basically all our characters are now in one setting at Hilltop. We'll see Simon, we'll see Dwight, we'll see Negan. I feel like Simon is such an interesting character. I'm always so fascinated by Simon. He's so bizarre and strange. I'm very fascinated by him, and I just feel like he's such a loose cannon.
Right. We're getting to his depths, basically.
Yeah. I just don't know necessarily what to expect with Simon sometimes. And I kind of feel like Simon's the kind of person who wouldn't be necessarily all that upset if Negan were not there, because he would like to be the one in command. You kind of get a sense of that even when Negan was stuck in the trailer.
I mean, he was always second in command. You know, he always had Negan's trust.
He was always second in command, so he would be the next one in line, basically.
The VP.
Exactly.
But you know what, though? You saw his little smile.
Yes, little smirk.
Kind of.
You just don't know with Simon. There's a lot of dissension in the ranks of the Saviors. You have a lot of them that are just kind of following orders, kind of like the ones that ran into Dwight, that are just sort of like, hey, all right, Dwight, you lead the way. You know what I mean? It's like when they ran into Dwight, they're like, hey, Dwight, all right, you lead. Like they're just following orders.
Yeah.
Well, Dwight, you know, for a fact, is obviously on the side of the Alexandrians. With Simon, it's become very clear that he doesn't necessarily agree with Negan's philosophy. So I think that that's very interesting. And I think that Simon's a loose cannon. You don't know. You just don't know necessarily where his loyalties stand. His loyalty is to himself.
Furthermore, it answers the question, or it elucidates what it's like to have all the power but none of the responsibility. He can do whatever, and as long as Negan doesn't punish him, it's kind of on Negan. It falls to the president, and the president will shut that S down. You know, he's kind of in a good spot.
Pretty much.
It's kind of like when you're at work and you have your manager, and that manager has a supervisor, let's say. The manager can probably get away with a whole lot of stuff. And anything that he does wrong will reflect on the supervisor, but the supervisor may not necessarily punish the manager as much as the manager would punish his underlings. So he's kind of like this buffer. He's this like nebulizing membrane between the supervisor and the workers. So anything he does, it's kind of neutralized a little bit because of his position. He's a trusted position. He gets, he gets the workers moving, stuff like that. That position is crazy dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to see in the next episode is that Simon is probably going to take Negan's choice for making peace out of Negan's hands.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be abundantly clear the situation that he's wrought, and it will be on him.
Yeah.
You know, not on the Alexandrians, not on the kingdom. It's going to be on him. It's his philosophy. It's his thinking that it would carry him through. That is his fault. And there's going to be a reckoning. And Rick is going to have that same reckoning, and Eugene is going to have that reckoning, and Tara, I think, has already found that reckoning. Tara has already seen that Dwight has given himself up, taking a chance that the Saviors are going to kill him, hearing that Laura didn't rat him out, knowing full well that he threw himself into a possible situation where he would have been destroyed. I think it may be a reckoning for her in terms of the safety that Dwight bought the Alexandrians. There's no denying at this point that at least in some way it'll cause her to hesitate.
Right.
Before pulling a gun on Dwight again.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, on that note, let me ask you one thing. Do you think Daryl doesn't allow Dwight to eliminate the Swamp Walkers because he wanted him safe from them?
Good question.
I mean, is it just because he doesn't trust him? Because I know he makes it very clear that he doesn't.
Right.
To the point where he has to stop himself from swearing in front of Judith. But at the same time, do you think he's like a valued asset at the very least?
It could be. I guess like when I think about it, yeah, maybe that is the case, that it's more of like a valued asset situation, because it kind of reminds me of the Eugene and Abraham situation, where Abraham protected Eugene to the nth degree because this is the person, you got to protect them because they've got the key or whatever. Ooh, actually, that's the name of the next episode, The Key.
Ooh.
I wonder.
Yeah.
I wonder what that means.
Simon is the key. No, Dwight is the key.
Who is the key? The key to what? Necessarily.
Gozer is the key. No, never mind. Sorry, wrong show.
Who is the key?
Yeah. Or maybe it's the concept. What is the thing that just unlocks all the doors, blows them wide open?
I know.
Lets people in, makes peace possible.
When do you think we're going to wrap up this war?
Well, let's put it this way. Let's do the math. Right now, we're in episode 11, okay?
Right.
We started with 9, 10, 11.
Yes.
The next one's going to be the action-packed peak.
Right.
Do I think that we're going to have another action-packed episode after that? I think we are, because I think that Simon is going to run away with the show.
Yeah.
It's going to go to where it's out of Negan's hands, and I think there's going to be a reckoning there. So I think you're going to have two back-to-back, because I think the formula worked for them. I think what you brought up about last season or season and a half about things being very slow-paced, I think they picked up on that. They saw how well people received the first 4 episodes of season 8, and I think they're going to have these 2 intense episodes, and I think there's going to be some... I don't think it's going to be over However, I think there's going to be a road, and I think there's going to be a reckoning, and I think that things may happen, but they're going to happen in smaller sequences, like the fight between Morgan and Jesus. But yeah, we're going to have our 2 intense episodes, and that leaves us with, I think, was it 9, 10, 11, then 2 episodes, and then you have 3 more episodes after that. I think those episodes may contain some of the little things that were dropped along the way on season 7 and 8. You know, little Heaths and helicopters and Jadis, maybe even.
I know that's another wild card.
Right. And I think those 3 will be the last 3 episodes, maybe.
Yeah.
If we don't, unless we see Jadis in the next episode, which I highly doubt it, we'll get something. I think something. I won't say what, but you know, there'll be a little reveals.
I don't think those things ever fully go away. I think that they're there. It's just a matter of when it'll pop up again.
It's really difficult to tell where this season's going to go from here.
It is. It's very difficult because it's hard to know whether, if from my perspective as somebody who reads the comics, it's like I don't anticipate them sticking to the script necessarily, per se. They could,
being the comic book,
right? Like it no longer is like the script to go by and say like, well, this is what's going to happen. It's like, well, maybe not. You know?
Yeah, they kind of shook us out of the formula, or like what we would expect. And I think Kirkman has said that too. He said that any opportunity to shake people out of the idea that they know what's going to happen it's what has kept people watching the show, is basically what he said. Unlike things like Harry Potter, or you know, which is kind of like, which is very interesting to say, because okay, like with Harry Potter and maybe any adaptation, is that you get kind of like a watered down version of the book, let's say. And this is definitely not that. It's more so not that. It's not only that it doesn't follow the book, or not. It's not only that, it's not even that it's a watered down version of anything. It's like a full-on character expose. It really goes into the character, the mannerisms, like even Gregory, you know, the way his mannerisms that you can't imitate in the comics as well. Negan is the same way. You can get into that depth. It's more, I think, and I think Kirkman knows that and is exploiting that. You have the opportunity to have these long pan scenes, these dramatic reveals, like Carl in the church with Michonne and Rick over him, and you feel the gravity of that. You can get that in a way, you know, with beautiful panels in a comic, or maybe like a full page panel, but it's so much better, you know, when you can see it. Yeah,
some things are hard, and it goes both ways. There are some things that translate better onto the screen and can be better illustrated in a visual sense on the screen, and there are some things that honestly work better written, because it's very hard to really depict it. My best example of it is, like, I don't know if you ever saw 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I do, but I keep falling asleep.
It is a very laborious movie. I get it. But if you ever read the book by Arthur C. Clarke, a lot of people will know the ending of 2001 because it has like the giant baby in space or whatever, and everybody's like, what the hell does that mean? You know, and like, you know, but if you read the book, it's a lot more clear in terms of what the author is trying to say about mankind and civilization, which is really hard to illustrate in a movie form. It's just very, very difficult.
Right. You can't escape having to describe what the meaning of that.
Yeah. That's a hard thing to depict.
Yeah, whereas a movie, it can get lost. Right.
And then on the flip side of it, there are some things that just work better. There are some people that have had a big attitude about some of the liberties that the show has taken in terms of departing from the comics, especially with this whole Carl thing. And a lot of people got very adamant, saying, you know, it's a slap in the face to Kirkman's comics to say that the way the comic was written, it doesn't work for the screen. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. No, because at the end of the day, it's like, as somebody who's read the comics, and I think that the comics are good, there are certain things that you kind of suspend belief and you're like, okay, and you just roll with it. But it'd be a hard sell on TV. In the comic, we just kind of keep moving forward. It's like, all right, next panel, and this is what's happening. Okay, all right. And that's that.
Also, how boring would that get? Let's just be real here.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person that this is just the way I work, and maybe that's why I'm in IT, and it's why I do a lot of things with music and all that. But the way I look at things is that when something's written down on the paper and I have the opportunity to improve it, you know, that's what I do. Even if it's my own work, even if somebody shows me it in a different way, playing it on a different instrument, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I can't help myself but try to improve that. And what Kirkman is basically saying, and Kirkman's intimately involved in the show.
Yes.
So he's really, it's not just that they're taking these liberties, and which obviously the producers like Scott Gimple, they're putting their 2 cents in.
Sure.
But they're running it by Kirkman.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and I think Kirkman has the
final say. He has the final say.
Well, does he? Because that's the thing. I'm not entirely sure, but it feels like he kind of puts a check mark right next to the suggestions. He's like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, he's the one who basically is the one to okay these things, because ultimately, like, he's the mainstay on the show. There have been other showrunners that I think, what was his name? Frank
Darabont, yeah.
Yeah, like, people come and go, but Kirkman's not going anywhere. You know?
You had my rant about Darabont, so yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, what we're saying right now may have been like Kirkman saying, no, this guy's taking too many liberties. He's spending too much money on this.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be that way.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I think Kirkman even said that there were certain things that he did in the comic in terms of the way certain characters died that he wished.
Oh, that he regretted. Yeah.
That he regretted. And he said that about Abraham. I wouldn't be surprised if even with Gabriel, it's similar, because Father Gabriel's trajectory in the comic is different than what's happening with him here.
Right.
And, Father Gabriel isn't long for the world in the comic, but his death also feels very similar to the way that they killed off Abraham in the comic, where it just doesn't have as much of a, purpose necessarily.
Yeah.
Where, like, here, they're really giving Gabriel like a purpose, even if he might like be killed off tomorrow, but he's trying to at least go down with a purpose, which wasn't necessarily the case in the comic form. So I think that there's always room to improve on it.
Right. And I think that's what makes his character meta, by the way, like in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Kirkman is saying, I need to give this character a purpose because and I'm going to write it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, and it seems like he's reutilizing these characters in ways that are way more useful, I think, to, let's say, advance the story, but also make it, like, beef it up more.
Right.
To give it more oomph.
Yeah.
Rather than just deflate you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we thought that Glenn was going to die, there was a feeling that would have deflated us to all hell.
Yeah.
And again, I think the way they did it, they totally intended on doing that. They took a chance and then they brought him back. And I think they meant to do it that way, but it really just brought the point home that people didn't react very well to that.
No.
And it's you want Glenn to die now? Okay, let's kill him now. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, see that? I wasn't going to let him die anyway, but you see what happens when you do that?
Jesus.
I was right about Abraham. Yeah, I was right.
Oh God, yeah.
So yeah, and you to think about how many people left the show, regardless of that fact, like regardless of the fact that they tried to give characters more not meaningful deaths, but using them to the point where when we lose them, we can be okay with that, or more okay with that. We're not going to be okay, but at least it feels more right, than wrong. Yeah, that makes more sense.
We accept it. We accept it more,
right? Or we find a way to accept it more, rather than like just feeling sad, just endlessly sad, or just giving up on the show, rage quitting.
Yeah,
The Walking Dead,
rage quitting.
I want to move to Maggie and her situation because it's like the only thing we really haven't covered at all. And you see how hard she is in the beginning.
Yes.
Faced with a completely rational situation where she handles it in the most rational way. And what you were worried about initially was that she is feeling what it's like to be the leader and possibly turning to, like, not like a Gregory, but like how things go. People get into power and they realize they have to make really tough decisions.
Yeah.
And so when you really look at her situation, what she does is completely reasonable. My people first. You guys are the enemy, etc., etc. But then you have the interaction with Sadiq, and that changes everything.
And that changes everything, yeah.
What do you think went through her mind?
I think because she looked around and she saw how everybody was like trying to help each other and they didn't necessarily know each other. You have all these random people that are essentially refugees, let's be honest.
Yeah.
That are coming in and they're all trying to help each other where they can. Sadiq has medical knowledge, so he's, hey, I'll set up an infirmary. Blech, I didn't pronounce it right.
Infirmary?
Yeah, exactly. That's the word. I'll set up an infirmary. And, why am I saying right? Oh my
because
God.
you've been infirm lately.
Because I've been disabled lately. So,
It's colored your perception of language.
it's colored my perception of language. It's so sad.
But you're seeing how like people are pitching in, and it's not just that they're feeding mouths. They're
not looking to just take. They're sort of like, hey, you know what? I can help you with this. Thank you so much for letting us come and stay here. I can do this for you. Do you need this?
Yeah, I'm not going to be a drag.
No, exactly. And I think this guy, not knowing her from anybody, offering his services to basically help
The stranger, right?
all these strangers, that was kind of eye-opening for her. And probably also because we don't hear it, but we see how basically when Daryl and them all arrive, that he basically tells them what happened to Carl. That you can just kind of read his lips and see.
Oh, and how he died too, I'm sure.
Right. And I think, and that's the thing, they do know. And then when Carol and Morgan are talking to
Henry, right?
I think they do mention he died helping somebody else. So I think that they all kind of know that Carl died and how it happened. So I think that also probably played a part in Maggie's mind for why to basically have mercy on these prisoners and not just treat them like animals.
And Morgan deciding to basically tell Henry that Gavin killed his brother.
Right.
That is something. I think he sees that it's not enough to give him the skills, but also to give him a sense of humanity.
Yeah.
To not be lost in a quest that will ultimately possibly kill them.
Yeah, bloodlust.
Like, even if he survives it, will he survive it?
Right.
And it's what Carol says that really hammers that home is like, you're not okay and you're an adult.
Imagine this kid.
Right. How do you think he's a developing mind? How is he going to handle that?
Right.
Developing that way.
Yeah.
Is he going to be the next whatever? And we've seen kids like that.
Carl was on that slope. He was on a slippery slope heading in that direction too, until Rick basically kind of stepped in and as a parent and, showed him the way. And he said that on his last moments.
Yeah. And notice one thing is that once they're done with that situation, Morgan says it to Henry, it's over. We pan to Maggie. Maggie is watching this exchange.
She's watching it from afar,
And then Siddiq swoops in for the final blow of kindness and hospitality.
Yeah.
And seeing how being hard will produce maybe a bad result. Will produce a Gregory, will produce a Negan. I think maybe she had been thinking about how she's been handling the situation and probably thinking that everything she's been doing is personally reasonable. Again, I'll say it again and again, but seeing that there could be a better way and she's embracing that better way. So I guess we're seeing, instead of going back to old habits or going back to what would be the default, we're seeing people evolve finally. And Maggie is the first one. And I think it's good that it's Maggie.
I think so.
Because I think we were worried that she was going on a kind of path.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I always felt like she still had her humanity ultimately hidden in there, just based on when she executed that prisoner, and she was all tough and she walked away and you could see that she was in tears. That is not who she wants to be. It's not who she wants to be whatsoever. She's had to be it because she has this community that is basically looking to her for guidance and safety. So she can't necessarily be weak, but at the same time, she's not a monster. She's not a sociopath. So.
Right. I think you were also worried that she wouldn't have as much of a role.
I still am concerned about her role because I feel like even just look at this podcast, and not to say that she's an afterthought, but I mean, we've spent so much time on everybody else other than Maggie's storyline. And I blame that on the fact that I think that they could have done a little bit more for Maggie. And maybe to their credit, now that the hilltop is going to be like, quote unquote, the last stand, because that is where they're all congregated, maybe we will see more of that. Right.
Maybe. Instead of flipping back and forth between these different 4 settings. We have 2, maybe 3 settings max. Right. And we'll be spending more time on each one.
Right. So maybe we will get to see more of her involvement because I feel like right now they really haven't. They kind of like, as a second thought, sort of like, all right, let's see, here's what's going on with Maggie or whatever. You gotta.
Oh, she's all right. Yeah, moving along.
Yeah, you gotta wonder when Jesus is going to show up.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see that. We're going to see Jesus come back. We're going to see how things, because Hilltop is the standing ground, and I think Maggie's going to have a big role in that. Yeah. Rick is grieving. Rick is falling into old habits. Michonne is done. So I think Maggie's going to really step up here. It's got to be that. Right?
It's got to be like that, I would think.
And Morgan's not right either, too. And Carol is probably just trying to get Morgan in line. So who's the most well-adjusted person in this camp?
I have to say Maggie. Maggie is the most well-adjusted person, as much as she is the widow that they reference.
Don't underestimate her.
It's kind of cool though, right? The widow.
Yeah, absolutely.
As much as they may say that, she is probably the most well-adjusted in the mindset of being clear on, hey, this is what we have to do, and that's all.
But then also having that extra, like again, how she changed at the just the last second of the episode. Now, she has the ability to see other options.
Yes.
After seeing a little kindness and people changing.
Yeah, she's not blinded by rage at this point, or by sheer emotion, which I think is the downfall for a lot of these characters. Rick acting on sheer emotion, even Rosita early on with the whole Negan thing, acting on sheer emotion and taking a shot at him and getting Olivia. She got Olivia killed. That was, I gotta say, that was one of the not funniest kills, because it wasn't funny. I still, to me, that is still the best Negan line ever. Negan hurts Olivia's feelings after he brought Carl home. Yeah. And he offers to screw her brains out, I think he says. Like, slaps him. And he says he's 50% more into her now. Yeah. Me and Eddie were.
So not when he killed her, but that. But when
he wasn't the one to kill her. It was Arat who did.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Good point.
And he told Rick it wouldn't have been his choice to do that for obvious reasons, I suppose. When these characters act on their emotions, Sasha acted hell-bent. They act emotional and get it in their heads like, this is what I have to just do. I just have to do this. It never really has good results. Even Simon, it's like you said, that there is a reckoning that's going to come from that for sure.
Yeah. You know? There's going to be something that the VP does that's going to eventually get him fired. He's like testing his limits. He's like anybody else who has power, like a Tiger Woods or
how far can you like push,
or Elliot Spitzer or Anthony Weiner, things like that. Bill Clinton. Well, okay, I'm going on the political, but you get the idea.
Yeah, there's so much to choose from. That's the problem.
You have all the adoration, all the power, and then there's nothing to stop you almost. Nothing except for one thing. If you cross that line, it's over. And if you cross Negan, it may or may not be over. No, if now that we're looking at this next sneak peek, it does go back to Maggie though, because do you remember what Philip said? He said Maggie says there's no other way, and then Philip is you don't have to do this.
Right.
You still don't have to do this. So it does make, if that's even his name, it does make Philip right in a weird way. So I think, okay, I have one last question. Do you think something's gonna happen between those two?
Yes, I do.
Oh snap! You were really quick.
100%.
I was hoping you'd hesitate more, but like
100%, I do.
I was hoping you'd hesitate to prevent me from falling off that cliff.
No, I do. I think love is in the air.
Wow.
Yeah. Which again, poor Daryl.
I'm like psyched.
Poor Daryl. Like no, it's true. Like I always feel bad for him. I'm like, everybody is like getting something here, and Daryl gets nothing. I'm like, I don't quite understand this. I'm like, you guys better give him something.
Well, maybe that's what it'll make it so much more meaningful when he does get it.
Yeah.
Do you thought he was kind of getting that with
Beth?
Thank you. Yeah, with Beth.
But they were so weird with that. Like it was never quite clear what the hell that relationship was. It was very bizarre. It was very, very strange. Nothing ever really seemed to ever come from that, other than he seemed to really care for her, and maybe it was more than that, but it never came to any kind of fruition. The love interest storyline involving Carl, a lot of people thought like, well, the female character is a little on the younger side, so I don't know if it would work with Daryl or whatever. But then at the same time, with Daryl and Beth, I mean, Beth was younger than Daryl.
Yeah.
Pretty similar. And Daryl has a bit of a arrested development going on.
Yeah.
Early on in the show, you got the sense that he came from a troubled family background, but there was some abuse there. So, which maybe is part of why he's this perpetual loner all the time.
Right. Nearby, but not close.
Yeah, nearby, but never quite close enough. So, I think if they really wanted to kind of make things interesting, give that storyline to him. First of all, people would be shocked because like I said, they've never gone down that road with him whatsoever. Right. I think that people would be shocked to see a different dimension to him. And then you keep the comic book fans happy because you can still keep to the same storyline basically. Right.
Oh, and I'd love to see him handle it poorly too, because that's what's going to happen. Like
because
initially.
He does. Because that's what he does. It works because Daryl handles things very poorly, so it fits character. It works. So that's my hope. But in terms of Maggie, yeah, I think there's love there. There's love there.
If there is, I don't think it's very obvious. I don't think that a lot of people picked up on that possibility.
I think it's more one-sided right now, or will be.
I don't know if it's any-sided, but I think it's side-sided. I think it's us going.
It's like there's love there.
We're like Cupids. We're just like shooting arrows into their butts right now.
Shooting arrows. Come on, you guys, get together.
Pick it up, buddy.
Come on.
Yeah, shoot him in the tuchus. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm.
Are we devils or are we Cupid? I'm not sure at this point.
I am definitely shipping Maggie and what's his name?
I guess Philip, or
is that his name? Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever.
Nice savior, kind savior.
Yeah, or whatever Dean said. Because remember, he screamed out a different name. I forget what it was.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So that guy, I'm shipping Jesus and Aaron for sure.
And they were kind of shipping each other last week, by the way, if you remember. And I think didn't that happen in the comics or something?
It did. Yes, it did.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I'm waiting for that to happen.
See Jesus in his lobster bib and Aaron wiping Jesus's mouth.
Oh gosh. So
anyway,
funny. Who would have thought Aaron is still around, right?
Well, and I guess we have to get back to that at some point, right?
Yeah, he's still at Oceanside. Maybe Jesus turns up at Oceanside and they all show up. Jesus, Aaron, and the Oceanside people. He's out scavenging.
So do you think it's more of a rescue mission that he's rescuing her, and that's how it could happen?
That's how it could happen. He could be out scavenging, but in his travels, save Aaron and Oceanside, and
I think it's way more purposeful than that, because Oceanside's quite a bit of ways away.
Yeah.
I think there's a mission going on here.
Maybe it's possible.
That's interesting, huh?
Yeah, I feel like the fact that Jesus is like, oh, he's out scavenging. I'm like, yeah, you're going to come across something. You're not going to just show up with like pasta.
He's showing up with paella.
I know.
Ceviche.
I know. There you go. Jesus is the wheel.
I mean, there are footsteps on the side of the road. You got to let him in.
So
at some point.
So awesome.
That was the best line. A delirious Father Gabriel was like, oh, why don't I let Jesus take the wheel? Well, I mean, you can at least let him in the car. There's footsteps on the side of the road. I mean, come on.
I know. I thought, see, that was
that was like the perfect lighthearted moment too. Like we needed that.
There are some relationships that I feel that I wish the show that they would have had an opportunity to explore more. I like the Dr. Carson, Father Gabriel dynamic. I would have liked to have seen more of that. Big part of the reason why some people were so angry about Carl dying was that he has a very big relationship with Negan in the comic book. And you kind of got senses of that in terms of like Negan's fondness for him and all of that. I would have loved to have seen more of that. I guess the same kind of fondness you would have for like a rambunctious troublemaking child. I don't know. It's like he told Carl when he was on like the gate, and he realizes that he basically pulled the wool over his eyes, and he says, I thought we were having a moment, you little shit. Something like that,
Yeah, like horsing around, basically, that kind of relationship.
Which I thought was hilarious too, by the way. That was
right.
Awesome.
But then you're also missing out on these moments, like where you could have a mentor, student Padawan, yes. But then also the master becomes the student becomes the master kind of moment, maybe.
Right.
But and here's the thing: do you think that the lack of interaction might make the reason why Negan stops not convincing enough, or do you think maybe they're going to employ, like, let's say, Simon going off the reservation as being the main point? Like, maybe Carl's thing is not incidental, but like a contributing factor in a tiny, tiny way? Mm-hmm. Or do you think they're really going to latch on to Carl being a heavy part of the reason? But it's the whole thing. Like, if they do latch into Carl being the reason why Negan lays down his guns or his bat, then was the interaction the lack of interaction maybe not convincing enough for that to be the reason?
Yeah, that's
a troubling thing.
That's where I have a problem. If you really latch on to this whole, like, Carl's death is the impetus to basically bring this war to an end, then I would have wanted to see more of this relationship in order for that really to kind of come through of, like, yes, this death mattered significantly to both of these men, to his father and to this man who really took a shine to him. Like, you know what it is? I would have wanted to see the kind of Shane Rick sort of situation. I would have wanted to see that. that because Shane was trying to take Carl under his wing at that time.
Right.
Because he felt like, Rick, hey, you're not a good enough dad. You can't teach this kid how to take care of himself, but I can. How different is it from this? Not all that different.
I mean, Shane is like the Morgan, or was going to be the Morgan, like where, Morgan to Henry, he knows how to kill, he knows how to handle himself. Yeah. He's equipped for this world now. And it's like the same thing with Carl and Negan, maybe. It's he's got the stuff. I'm going to keep teaching him how to do this stuff and be
I'm gonna make
part of this world.
One of my best men.
Right, exactly. And you didn't get the opportunity now, and you probably would never have.
Right.
So
right. But he that's what he would have wanted. But I think that Carl saw something in him, though, even when he was at the gate and was like, is this what you really wanted? Is this what you wanted? And I feel like he saw more than just the facade, essentially. Negan did take him under his wing at the sanctuary, showed him around, took him here, took him there, brought him home. He never laid a finger on him in a rough way whatsoever. Not even to scare him, nothing, not once. Hung out on the porch in a rocking chair holding his sister.
Yeah. And you know what else? It's kind of telling because Daryl was captured and he didn't get any of that. And Eugene got toured around the sanctuary and he got the message right away. But and he went the other way, let's say. Right. And then Carl was right in the middle. And the reason why I say it's telling is that it really does say a lot about our generation and how even if you don't agree with somebody, just hear them out. Hear their opinions. Let them have their say. Don't wait to just kind of talk and demolish your debating opponent. I think we all kind of just vie in to try to get our own opinion out to what we think the world should be like. But maybe we should try listening a little bit more, get a little bigger picture of what the world really is like. At that point, we can maybe start to find some sort of middle ground where we all agree on something. Maybe we agree to disagree. Maybe at least we have a rolling dialogue. And I think that in this weird, subtle, completely non-political way, the world is kind of teaching us that, look, if you keep going down this path, you're going to reach a situation where, they made me do it. It's on them. and you're going to keep falling back on these habits where it's us versus them, and then it's going to be them. Yeah. And Carl didn't have a choice in the matter. Not really. Did he have a choice? Was he going to sacrifice himself to get Negan? No. But, as long as he was captured and he was being toured around the sanctuary and being held captive in his own home while Negan was around, it gave him the opportunity to kind of keep his eyes wide open and take in Negan and who he is. And at that point, that's when you start seeing the change. Like his change in attitude towards Negan. Of course, he wants it to be over. Of course, Negan's wrong about how this should be. But at least he's operating on more information. Right. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think so. It's quite poetic.
Especially with the trajectory that the show may still go on based on the comic in a way. And if that does happen, it really might actually show us a way in life. Squawking Dead, we teach you life lessons. That things might actually work out.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too.
That's my hope.
And with that, we're going to call it a night. Yeah. It's perfect. Hope for the future, Squawking Dead. And I hope you tune in next week for next week's episode. We can tell already that it's going to be a high-paced, high-action, high-nos-filled, and there's EDM music in the background kind of episode. Maybe. And we hope you tune in for the aftermath, where we're probably still shaking after several days, and we have to talk about it. Yep. So until then, take care, everybody.
And we'll see you next time.